Good evening. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Dr. Foley, roll call, please.
President Kaler, members of the board, please let the record show that all members are present.
Thank you very much. We're going to have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Two point one, I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Questions or concerns about the agenda? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Up next is awards and recognitions in the superintendent's report. Dr. Foley.
President Kaler, members of the board, we start tonight with one of our very favorite parts of our meeting, which is celebrating our amazing students and those who love and support them. And tonight we have the littlest learners in the house. And so if I could have Mrs. Patty Gleason and Mrs. Stacy Utley come up here. And we're going to start tonight by celebrating our little cougars and those who love and support them. So when we call you up, we're going to have you stay up here. And then when we celebrate all four of you, we're going to take a beautiful picture with you. So, ready to start?
Thank you so much. And good evening, President Kaler. Oh, there you are, and members of the board. So happy to be here. And tonight we actually get to show you why we are so amazing in preschool. So tonight we're going to start with our little Cooley Cougars, and let's have Miss Cheryl Turner. Please come on up. And Cheryl is our certified Points of Pride, and she was nominated by a couple of our staff members, so we're very excited to be honoring her this evening. So Cheryl is our choice for our CEC DC Point of Pride because of her love and dedication to her students, teammates, and school family. Her colleagues said it best. Honestly, I do not think I have met another person with a heart as big as hers. She is always willing to come alongside to help others in any way she can. She saw that my class was studying apples, and she brought plastic red and green apples so that my class could use them in our farmer's market. She's continually making batches of the most amazingly soft Play-Doh that you have ever worked with, and sharing them with anyone who asks. She always has a kind word or a smile to offer to both students and teachers. In a time when there is so much mean-spiritedness, competitiveness, selfishness, etc., it is so refreshing to interact with someone like Cheryl. She is the embodiment of my favorite quote, "In a world where you can be anything you want to be kind." Cheryl is so thoughtful and kind that it is this point of pride that we should be recognizing kindness. I love that lady. And this was Christy McCullough who wrote this for you. And we have another one too. So I nominate Cheryl Turner because she represents all that we stand for here at Cooley. She's a team player, always willing to help others. She will jump in and help any student on the playground, share fun ideas and props for various themes, makes Play-Doh for other classrooms, and even helps create activities for Kids Club. It's amazing. You can always count on Cheryl to stop and chat with your children. She always makes them feel special and valued. In addition, Cheryl always has been my greatest cheerleader. Since my first year here, Cheryl has always validated anything happening and will offer a kind word with a smile. She loves children and truly wants everyone to succeed. And I believe that was Carrie Burnett who wrote that for you too. But Cheryl is amazing in what she creates for her classrooms. Literally, she has our best students, so these are our highest need students, and her dramatic plays are incredible, creating actual props that the children can use. So when they're learning row, row, row your boat, she actually creates a boat and they're in it and doing the row, row, row your boat. So just one of the many things that she does. But Cheryl Turner, we honor you tonight. Thank you. All right, so our next honoree, Point of Pride, will Amy Chalgren please come forward? She's nervous. Come on up. Okay. Miss Amy, you too were nominated by several people in our center, so we're really excited to be honoring you this evening. So Amy is our nomination for Classified Points of Pride because of her leadership role as our lead SPED para and the way she cares for and loves her students. She has stepped up in such an incredible way for the SPED team. She's become a terrific leader, always offers to help, and has such a positive and joyful attitude. She is a whiz at scheduling paras and is always trying to make the schedule changes that work for everyone. Amy is extremely reliable and dependable. She communicates well with staff and students and always has a positive attitude and a great sense of humor. Amy is an asset to our classroom and to our school community. Amy Chalgren. Okay, and next we'd like to honor our volunteer, Samantha Wintz. Will you please come on up? So Samantha's just new to our school. She's part of our PTO, and she's part of our hospitality committee. And man, does she have what it takes to be that person. Hold on. There you go. It's right there. You got it, girl. Thank you. So Samantha Wintz is our nomination for our volunteer Point of Pride. She's a volunteer with our PTO, and she is our hospitality coordinator at Cooley. The job title fits her perfectly. She is always smiling, and her positive energy lights up the building. She is willing to do whatever it takes to take care of our students and staff, and has spent hours coordinating our restaurant nights, fundraisers, creating the flyers, and communicating to our staff and our families. She is full of ideas and energy, and to top it all off, she has quite a sense of humor. Yeah, she is. She is. She's the real deal, genuine, sweet, and helpful. Miss Samantha. Okay, and then last but not least, our Lucia Hernandez. Will you come up? And will her teacher, please, Miss Carrie Burnett, also come up?
Oh, yeah. All right, Miss Lucia. You want to say hi?
Hi.
Okay, I nominate Lucia Hernandez as our Points of Pride student because she is a ray of light in our room. Lucia comes in each day with a smile and excited to learn. She is friendly with all of the children. She knows what the classroom expectations are and always works hard. Whenever we have a new student or someone needing help, Lucia is willing to jump right in. She is a natural-born leader. In addition, Lucia is compassionate. If someone is sad, she'll always offer a big hug and comfort. She always makes us laugh with her stories and is excited to share all that she knows. We are excited to see what is ahead for Lucia. Good job, honey.
And this is okay. They're going to shake your hand.
Shake your hand. Can you do it?
So beautiful.
I love how she spins and twirls. I know.
Good to see you tonight, too.
I saw your yoga.
I was going to say,
Her yoga.
Congratulations. Shake your hand.
oh, God, you're so fun.
Right, that's a good idea.
Okay, and now we get to switch to the southern part of our district, and we're gonna do our points of pride for our little Spartans. And we're gonna start off with Jennifer Ziegler. Will you please come up first? Yay. All right, lovingly called Jay-Z at our center. Jennifer is our nominee for Certified Points of Pride. Jen is the team lead for our special education preschool department at Sossaman, and she is also the chairman of our Sunshine Committee, and she personifies sunshine. She does. She helps us celebrate everything all year long, and she is always looking for ways to brighten our days and to lighten our load. She goes above and beyond for her students and our staff. She has jumped in to lend a helping hand multiple times when we have been short-staffed, and she is someone our teachers can go to if they need extra supplies or just extra help in the classroom. You are always there for them, Jen, you really are. She's a true team player. Her kindness and flexibility is noticed by all who work with her, and again, to your students, again, amazing lessons, hands-on lessons. Every time I come into the classroom, they're all engaged, and she has every child just eating out of the palm of her hand. Her room is decorated like Disney. Well, it is like Disney. So please congratulate Jennifer Ziegler. And then Paula Kwiatkowski is our classified Points of Pride. And they're actually teammates. So they work together, yes, and they play together beautifully. It's so good. So Paula Kwiatkowski is our nomination for a classified Point of Pride. Paula is a para in one of our special education classrooms. She loves what she does and excels at building deep connections with the children and parents. You would never know Paula ever has a bad day because she's always smiling. She goes above and beyond the job expectations, even knowing what is needed and expected before the teacher does. You'd say that, yeah, you're right here to say yes. Mm-hmm. On the playground, every child is her child as she plays with all the children. She's generous and puts her whole heart into her job and her students. She's a positive influence on our staff and especially on our paras. She is always willing to train them as well. This school year, she has helped our SLPs with state-required assessments by finding a more efficient way to gather and input the data into the system, which is always very helpful. She is also a member of the Sunshine Committee, making it shine even more. As part of this committee, she makes homemade bundt cakes for all of our staff birthdays. And they are the most delicious bundt cakes. In fact, usually I get nothing bundt cakes for that, but I figure she couldn't even have one because she makes better than them. Yeah, she's really good. So delicious. And she lets them pick their favorite flavor and then makes them what they want. So I know, it's pretty amazing. Every staff member in our center will tell you she makes the best cakes in Arizona. Thank you for making every day special, Paula. Okay, and then our volunteer point of pride is one of our students from Sossaman Middle School. Will Violet Hoagland please come forward? We are very blessed to work with our middle school and are able to have our middle school students come and be TAs in our classroom. And she exemplifies what it means to do that role in our classroom. Her teacher, Laren Garrett, is here today, who nominated her. Violet is one of our middle school volunteers. She comes into Mrs. Garrett's classroom each day with a positive attitude, and the students love her. She takes direction well and is willing to do whatever Mrs. Garrett asks of her. Violet talks to the students with respect and kindness and is a natural teacher and a great example for our students. We are proud to recognize her today. Thank you. A future early childhood teacher, maybe? Yes? Okay. All right, so our last but not least, Kai, will you come up here? Kai Santos and his teacher. Miss Amy Kimball is going to share about Kai today.
So I teach the Spanish kinder prep class, and I've just been so impressed by Mr. Kai this whole year so far. He is learning so much Spanish. He knows a lot from home. He's one of the first ones to raise his hand. He could probably do the whole Pledge of Allegiance in Spanish for you. And he's just been doing great. Another reason I nominated Kai is because he's always so kind and inclusive to all the friends in our class. He's one of the first ones there. If he sees kids that needs help, he's there to help them. He's the first one to raise his hand, to pick up the toys, to help with whatever we need help. And I'm just so proud of him and his efforts to be a great student and a great friend to those in our class. We're grateful to have you, Kai. Good job.
Thank you.
Good job. Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Thank you for all you do. Appreciate you.
All these people, thank you.
Get that for you?
Congratulations, Kai.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna take our picture for a minute.
For those of you we celebrated tonight at Points of Pride, you're welcome to stay, but we also know you need dinner and school's tomorrow, so if you'd like to leave at this time, feel free to do so. Thank you for joining us this evening. Yeah. Okay, we'll continue with our upcoming events. November is flying by, and this week we've got a couple big events. This Friday is super busy. We will be doing a superintendent visit for those who are able to come at Gateway Point, and then we also have our annual fundraiser, our Monte Carlo night. Obviously, next week is Thanksgiving, and there's so much to be thankful for. We'll be sending communication to our employees and to our families about how much we value and appreciate them and wish them a very happy holiday with their families and loved ones. And then December, we have another meeting, and so the rest of this year is going to fly by. So these are just a couple highlights of upcoming meetings. And that concludes the superintendent's report this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Foley. Mrs. Zimmerman, no request to speak. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to consent. I move that we approve consent agenda items 5.1 to 5.10.
Second.
Questions, comments, concerns? I noticed we had some donations again, which is always awesome. ESI towards our Chinese New Year celebration, also Desert Financial Credit Union, and also WilfredBlackGoDaddy.com. And those were all from our business partner breakfast. And so we thank them for coming to that and also supporting our district very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 5-0. All right, we are going to move on to our information items, and we have several tonight, starting with 6.1 and the school letter grades for 2022. Excuse me, we had some information last week, but we're going to dive a little bit deeper now. Thank you very much.
Good evening, President Kaler, members of the board. Tonight, I'm pleased to present to you our overall letter grades and their component scores for each of our schools. Additionally, I'll be showing you some comparisons to our neighboring charter schools and our East Valley School Districts and their letter grades. We have a lot to celebrate tonight. And I should have a clicker. Sorry, I'm a little nervous.
Don't be scared. We're really nice.
There we go. Oops. There we go. Okay. Our focus tonight is on Strategic Anchor 1, which is teaching and learning student success. Specifically, we're focused on Indicator 1.5, supporting a collaborative culture using data and research-based practices. Some of the highlights that you'll be seeing as we progress through our school's letter grades. Bridges Elementary is one of only 20 K-8 schools within the state to have the maximum 30 points for proficiency. Williams Field High School was the number 12th rated overall, or number 12 overall in terms of the total percentage earned in the state for traditional high schools. 100% of our schools earned an A or B, with 8 of our 13 schools receiving an A, while the remaining 5 received a B. And you'll see that as we go through that, that's rare for all of our schools to earn A or B. Most districts have also C and D rated schools. And then on AZ Sci, the bonus points there, we had 5 sites that received the full 3 bonus points for significantly exceeding the state average, which is quite an accomplishment. We're going to start with Bridges Elementary. I'll be going through these alphabetically with our K-8 schools and then do our high schools at the end. Bridges did not have the minimum N count of 10 as LFA students, so they don't qualify for the full, for the 10 points for EL proficiency and growth. So due to that, their final score is determined by dividing their points by 90 rather than the 100, and then adding the bonus points onto this. So looking at this, Bridges earned 93.04 points, which was an A. And as I stated earlier, Bridges earned the maximum points for proficiency, but additionally, their growth score was the highest for the district. Centennial, whoops. Did I skip it? There we go. Centennial is our next school. They had the minimum N count for as LFA students, so their final total is divided by 100. Then the bonus is added onto that. For Centennial, they earned 89.01 points, which was an A. One of their celebrations, along with their A, is their improvement of 3rd grade minimally proficient on ELA, which earned them 5 out of the maximum 10 points for the acceleration readiness component. They went from 32% minimally proficient in 21 to 28% in 22, which is a great accomplishment. Chaparral earned 86.52 points, which was an A. One of the critical components for Chaparral's success and a celebration was their EL proficiency and growth, for which they earned the maximum 10 points. They had 22 as LFA students, which is the most for our district, and reclassified 7 of those students as English proficient, which almost doubled the state average. Cooley Middle School earned 79.59 points, which was a B. One of their celebrations was within the acceleration readiness measure. Schools earn points for improving the percentage of students that are highly proficient on 8th grade math, which is not an easy task. And Cooley saw their percentage improve from 21 to 22 and earned the points for that. Coronado, our next school, earned 81.43 points, which was a B. One of the celebrations for Coronado was within their subgroup scores. They had multiple subgroups that improved their passing proficiency from 21 to 22, and one of those improvements was within special education, where they saw their students improve their passing proficiency in both ELA and math. Cortina earned 83.57 points, which was a B. A celebration for Cortina was decreasing as well as our other site. They decreased the percentage of third grade students that were minimally proficient on ELA. They went from 22% minimally proficient to 17% minimally proficient in 22. Gateway earned 83.41 points, which was a B. One of their biggest celebrations is their growth score, which was the second highest score in the district for the K-8 category with 43.83 points. It's a huge accomplishment. Higley Traditional Academy earned 88.83 points, which was an A. For them, a celebration was with their sixth grade ELA, which had one of the highest growth scores in the district. 78% of their sixth grade ELA students were in the average or high growth category. Power Ranch earned 84.82 points, which was an A. For them, a celebration was with fourth grade ELA, which had the highest growth score of all schools in the district, playing a significant role in their growth points. Santana earned 88.48 points, which was an A. For them, a celebration was their proficiency score of 25.12, which was second only to Bridges in the district. And that was led by their third grade proficiency, which was one of the highest in the district. Sossaman earned 82.65 points, which was a B. Their seventh grade ELA had one of the highest growth scores in the district compared to all other grade levels, with 78% of the students in the average or high growth category as well. Now we're on to the two high schools. Higley High School earned 95.93 points, which is an A. For both of our high schools, there's a lot to be celebrated. One key for Higley High score was its CCRI score, which was 17.2. And that placed it within the top third of the state's traditional high schools in terms of their CCRI scores. Williamsfield earned 98.33 points, which was an A. And in addition to their overall score placing them in the top 20 in the state, Williamsfield also maxed out the growth score, earning over 20 points for their student growth from AZM2 last year to AASA this year. We have a number of charter schools that are around us that our students have transferred to or are within our boundaries. As you can see, we are highly competitive with these scores throughout all of our district schools. And due to the fact that charters can range throughout the state, for example, Legacy has schools throughout, in multiple cities around the state, I chose to just give you the actual schools that are within our boundaries or that we've seen students within our district move to. But again, very competitive with all of those scores with our sites. And finally, I did a district comparison. While we don't have district letter grades this year, we wanted to show you how we did in comparison to other East Valley districts. We would have been an A if they had provided letter grades for this year for districts though. The chart here shows the percentage of schools within the districts that earned an A, B, C, or D. These include traditional K-8 schools, traditional 9-12, and non-traditional hybrid schools. Non-traditional hybrid schools include any school that does not fit with the traditional configuration of K-8 or 9-12. So that would be 7-12 or a K-12 school. In these cases, they use both calculation methods, then weight the scores based on the percentage of students in K-8 versus 9-12, and then the 9-12 cut score is then used to determine their final letter grade. Some examples that you see in this chart would be Castile High School in Chandler is a non-traditional hybrid school, as well as Eastmark and Queen Creek. HVA will be considered to be a non-traditional hybrid school next year because they have students in both the K-8 section as well as the 9-12. As you see, we have the highest percentage of our schools in the East Valley with an A at 62%. Our closest competitor there would be Scottsdale with 59% of their schools at an A. Additionally, as I said earlier, we're the only district that didn't have a C or a D school. Chandler, their C schools were Payne Middle School as well as 3 elementaries in their downtown area. Gilbert had 3 of their junior highs and 2 of their elementary schools composed that C score. Kyrene had a D at one of their elementary schools, and then their C was their digital academy. Mesa, their Ds were at 2 of their elementary schools and 2 of their junior highs. Queen Creek had a C at both Queen Creek Elementary and Queen Creek Junior High, and their D was their virtual school. And then finally, Scottsdale C's are at one of their elementary schools and one of their K-8 schools and their online learning school. So we obviously have a lot to celebrate in the district. Our letter grades are very impressive. And I've had the opportunity to sit down with all of our principals, except for Mr. Dolan, that's tomorrow, to talk about their letter grades. And we really got to dive in deep and talk about what successes they have and what areas that we can look at for improvement as we move forward. So, any questions?
Any comments or questions? Oh, go ahead.
Just wanted to say hats off to all the staff, parents, students, everyone involved. That's phenomenal. Well done.
All right.
Go ahead, Mrs. Schultz.
Just real fast. Well, first, you said that Benjamin Franklin, or the charter schools comparison, but we, as high schools go, we were substantially higher.
Correct. Correct.
I just wanted to point that out. And just on the district comparisons, does it have anything to do, like, or there's just more schools in, say, Chandler? Is this a accurate comparison, or would Queen Creek be the next district that's our size, right? You know
That's the reason why I gave you percentages.
Okay.
Was because, yes, Chandler has a lot. Chandler, Scottsdale, Mesa, they have many more schools than we do.
Okay,
So
sorry.
I wanted to be able to show that percentage-wise of all of our schools, we have a high percentage of our schools in the A. Yes, that the number might be higher in Chandler with their number of A's, but percentage-wise of all of our schools, we've got the highest percentage of all of those East Valley schools.
Okay, that's great. And yeah, hats off to the teachers and staff and everyone, as Mrs. Anderson said.
Thank you very much for this presentation.
Thank you.
Maybe I need to talk way back here, or move it away. But again, I'll repeat what I said last time, is that they changed the standards, they changed the tests, they changed the whole calculation every year, it seems. So it's really hard for any school to get to this A. And so well done to Higley and to everybody, and anybody even with a B, I say well done, because again, there's no standard in Arizona at this point. So that's just my personal opinion. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Mr. Lotzenheiser is up next with our 2023-2024 course guide update.
Good evening, President Kaler, members of the board. It's my pleasure tonight to present to you as an information item the proposed 2023-2024 course guides. In our presentation today, we're going to talk about the process and the people involved. We're going to talk about changes to the guides. I'm very, very proud of the work that has been done, not just this year, but the past 3 years as we look through the course guides. And, our goal is to create something that is very useful for our families as well as our employees. And so I'm excited to present them to you tonight. So first, I called them the team course guide. And this is all the people that were involved in making the decisions. So as we saw what goes into the course guide, I'd like to recognize especially Dr. Chris Treat and the members of our instructional coaches and their staff. They had a really, really important job about bridging communication between the two different schools, both at the middle school and at the high school level. And they helped drive the discussions within their own departments about what we were going to do. And this year we would put a heavy emphasis on communication between the schools about proposals prior to us meeting, and the instructional coaches really led that charge for us. And so once again, to Dr. Treat and the rest of the coaches, thank you very much for all of your hard work as you helped prepare throughout this process. Additionally, up there, you'll see members of the district office, as well as the principal, the assistant principal of curriculum, and the counselor at each one of the schools. So again, our process goals, once again, to make the ease of use, we wanted a parent to be able to read it. Sometimes within education, we know our own terms, we know everything like that. However, we wanted to make this a working document for parents and families and to use it as planning. One thing we changed this year was communication. What happens is the proposals are submitted, and then we review those proposals as an Ed Services department and then together with the schools. This year we added something where both schools had to acknowledge and see the proposals prior to our meetings. What that did is that spurred a lot of communication from department members to have their opinions put in. So I felt like we included more people in this process so that the teachers of the subjects that were proposed had the ability to give their input and then was presented. That's what the instructional coaches helped organize for us. And that communication went really well and led to some outstanding discussion about what we wanted to put and change within the course guide within our meetings. And finally, we want to continue to focus on what opportunities we're providing our kids. You can see the results when you look at letter grades of all the different opportunities we have and the success of our kids. It's not by accident. There's a plan there to prepare our kids for limitless opportunities in the future. And through the course guide process, we're able to look at all of what we do at the schools and see what they're provided. I did put a little note on there. In the previous years, I feel like I have put a lot of information, and this has been a lot of things to do. And you've seen in status that we had over 50 proposals that we went through this year, and that you saw step-by-step change in what happened. Honestly, this year was a lot less than it has been in previous years because I think the work that we have done has been very important. And so when we got together to examine the documents, there was already a lot of consensus that what we were doing was already working, but let's tweak it a little bit and see what kind of different offerings we could have. There was a picture on that slide. I don't know where it went, for those who are counting. So let me talk about the timeline because this process does not happen overnight. And one of our goals this year was we wanted to start it earlier to give time for people to give input and for us to have discussion. So our first meeting, believe it or not, was on August 9th. Was that 3 weeks into the school year? We're already planning for the next year. And that meeting started out with the Ed Services Department and the instructional coaches so that everybody was on board about what we were asking teachers and sites to do. We reviewed our forms, we reviewed our process so that if any questions came, we were all on the same page. We rolled this out to the sites on August 15th, sent it to the administrators who then distributed it among their department chairs on their campus in order for us to get proposals. We added something this year where we did a course guide review. So as an Ed Services Department, we all sat down, and we went page by page and said, what in there do we need to fix? What is not working? And out of this discussion, you will see that we changed significantly some things that happened within our general information section to make what we feel like this guide be more user-friendly. That was driven off the discussion in there like, hey, can we find some way to have parents perhaps plan a little bit or just have an organization sheet for them to look at? And then let's move our pathways up so that they don't have to search and find. Let's try to compartmentalize it and make it easier for them to read. The recommendations came on September 12th, where the sites were due to us, and then the instructional coaches review those, and they review those to make sure we have appropriate curriculum in place. They review them to make sure that they fit in the scope and sequences of what we need to do within our programs, and they prepared it for our first review, our Ed Services review on September 22nd, where we went through each of the 50 different proposals. And the reason we did that before our first course guide meeting is if anything was missing, We wanted to figure out what was missing, so we had all the information when we were making a decision within the course guide teams at our meetings. We had 2 meetings that were held, October 13th and then 2 weeks later on October 27th. And what we did at those meetings, the high school people were involved, and then we had a middle school meeting as well, where we went through each proposal, and that's where we had the discussion where one department might have said, hey, I really want to have something put in place, and another person had the opportunity to say, we agree or we disagree, let's talk this out. By having communication required ahead of time, we already had positions and stances from the 2 different schools to allow us to have that communication. And for my aspect, and I want to give credit to the team, it was great conversation, and we were able to come to consensus on the decisions that we were making. We came back 2 weeks later because sometimes we still needed more information, and we did that. So after the 27th, we had our proposals. I shared with you in status what the different changes and everything was. So this timeline, once again, when we look at these proposals and these course guides that are listed, it's a significant amount of time, effort, and energy that has gone in to where we are at tonight. Something new this year is we have 4 different course guides that have been presented and provided for you. We have the traditional high school course guide. Once again, we focused on the end user. How can I make it more readable? With general information changes and a 4-year planning guide. This year, and I really need to give credit to Shauna Miller, who's in the back there, and her team, Kristen Nash and Chris Robinson, because neighboring schools had had issues with special education courses not being approved by the governing board. And they came and said, David, I want to get ahead of this. We have these courses already in place for our students. Students can't sign up for them. They're placed in them through the IEP process, but we needed to have course descriptions in place so that if our kids left, we could say what they were in, and especially if we ever get to the point where the NCAA is looking at some of our courses, we would have those descriptions. So they developed this special education course guide. It's going to be an internal document because people can't just sign up for it. And so when they go through the registration process, once again, these decisions are made through the IEP process. However, now we have descriptions, and you're able to see the courses that we have already been done and are doing on our campuses now. We have the middle school course guide where there really is minor changes for both of the schools, and we're continuing to look at consistency for both of those schools together. And then we have our HVA course guide, and with HVA, as it continues to grow, we learn sometimes some of the decisions we made didn't work. And so we have some changes, like we have to figure out, is what we've offered last year, is that appropriate to offer this year? And that's what we looked at with the HVA course guide. So let's talk about the high school course guide. So the first thing that you noticed when you looked at the draft was we reordered the general information. Once again, we tried to make it thematic, where they understood what was happening and where it was going, and we added a 4-year planning guide. And the planning guide is a simple sheet where they can say, hey, as a freshman here's what you can take, and if you take anything in the summer in HVA, so you can kind of plan your courses and get an idea, starting as a freshman, what it would look like if you want to plan out all 4 years. And I think that's an important thing to do as parents, is a lot of times we look at those guides and things and we think 1 year at a time. We try to put everything on one page so that they can fill them out. And so when they have discussions with their counselors about registration and what programs they wanted to be into, we added this 4-year planning guide. We also, like I said, our pathways used to be at the very end. So you go through all of our book, get all the way to the end, and then it showed you, hey, what's the general progression? These are guidelines. These are not have-tos, but they're general guidelines. If I take this class, what's the next class? And going there. We move those right up by the planning guide so that it's, once again, easy reference. Hey, if I'm in Algebra 1 as a freshman, now I'm going to Geometry, Algebra 2, Pre-Calc or whatever, or any other choices, they can see that very easily looking at those progressions. One thing that we worked really hard with our CTE program, as you know, CTE programs have different levels of completers, and we ask for kids to be in either 1 or 2 years to be completers, or in some of our programs, 3 years, and a lot of them offer options for both the 3rd and possibly a concurrent 4th year option. Well, in our previous course guides, they were just simply listed as a list of classes. This year we have a little small chart for each one of the individual programs. So if someone's going into graphic design, they would say, oh, here's the pathway that I would do for graphic design. If someone's going into early childhood education, here would be the courses that would be appropriate, because we think it's important for parents and for students to be able to understand that a CTE course is not necessarily just a 1 or 2 year There's more options above that, including the internships. And so we put those together and packaged them. I need to give credit to Craig Pearson, our Assistant Director of CTE, for working on that process. And to be honest with you, the amount of CTE programs that we provide in our district is phenomenal. There is so much that has gone into that, and I know that we are, as I've mentioned in status before, we're looking at adding another one to Higley High. EVIT hasn't voted on that yet. They're going to vote it on their next board meeting, so more than likely I'll be coming back to you to say, hey, here's what EVIT has approved. We would like to share with you what we would like to add at Higley High. We don't have that information yet. One of the big changes, though, that we did have was the removal of the courses that were called the blend courses. This was a program that was started, actually, I don't know how long ago it was started. It was pre-me. It's quite a few years ago. Maybe some of you were on the board when those things came, 7 years ago, where they were courses where students who were in the honors track or the ELAS track coming from the middle schools had the opportunity to go in a blend, which was a combined English and social studies course, where part of it was taught in person, part of it was taught virtually before we had an online school. What we've seen in the growth through our schools is that the number of students that were interested that has declined, including the staff that wanted to teach it and where it was put in. And honestly, it wasn't cost effective for us to continue this program on because we have other different ways that we can still allow students to accelerate and we can meet their needs at their time, at the time that they have, without having this combo course. And so there was unanimous decision amongst both high schools that said, we feel like it would be important. We can still provide the same opportunities for our kids without offering this blend course and what went along for it. Which leads us to our second one, this added AP Capstone Seminar as an English 10 credit. AP Capstone Seminar is traditionally an elective credit that now has evolved. It's really preparing students to be prepared for college level writing courses. So if you think about it, on our campus, we have AP 11 and AP 12, our college level writing courses. Capstone Seminar is to prepare them for those courses. The AP pushes really and has put out and said, we think that this is an appropriate 10th grade English course to help prepare them to be successful for AP 11 and for AP 12. And this is some new things that the College Board has put in place, and we think it's important for us to allow our students that opportunity. So where does this make a difference? So if I'm a honor student or I'm interested in AP and I'm going for that 10th grade credit, I will have the opportunity to earn either an honors English 10 or an AP Capstone Seminar. They would count for the same thing. With AP Capstone Seminar, it is the first course in a 2-year AP Capstone Diploma process, so that would start them along that path. Currently, we have those courses, they're elective. What we're asking this year is that we change it to be allowed to be an English 10 credit instead. So let's go back to the blend now. Typically, those kids came out and they went into Honors English 10 as freshmen. Well, now they're also going to have Honors English 10 or that additional possibility of an AP credit as a 9th grader for the AP and Capstone Seminar class. So it is adding additional AP options for what we are doing. We had to rename one of our courses, Foundational College Math, to Quantitative Reasoning because the NCAA clearinghouse does not approve courses with the name foundational in them. So Rachel Latham, our math coach, worked with other districts to see what they call it. It is an appropriate level class. We want to make sure that any athlete that is in that class has the opportunity then for scholarships. And so by renaming it Quantitative Reasoning, it will be approved by the NCAA clearinghouse. And finally, last year, we just, in terms of some logistical things, we offered an astronomy and oceanography each semester-long courses, and we moved them into the science. They're still elective courses, but we're housing them with science instead of the general elective courses so that people understand there are some science course elective offerings. Same way, if we look at our psychology courses are listed into the social studies department, right? And so they're just electives within those departments, and that's the appropriate place to put them. So on the whole, when you think about what we've done in the past in terms of our high school course guide, not a lot of changes that really happened, but I'm really excited about the fact that we can add this AP Capstone Seminar as an English credit, which will allow kids to earn more AP courses and prepare them for that AP 11 and AP 12 courses. Before I jump any further with the high school stuff, is there any questions on that? Okay. So once again, for our special education course guide, I just wanted to reiterate once more, this will be an internal document, and once again, Shauna, Kristen, and Chris, thank you very much for all of your efforts and energies on this to help so that we have definitions that you can see the courses that they're taking and how this is done, and so we'll be able to use this internal document when we register our students through the IEP process. Our middle school course guide really probably had the least amount of changes of any ones that we've had. One of the questions that came up is we have a Fundamentals of Biology 8, and where do the kids go after Fundamentals of Biology 8? And what we wanted to let people know is they will be prepared to take AP Bio as a 9th grader, and so that is something, it's their choice. They can go into Honors Bio or they can go into AP Bio as a 9th grader, but we wanted to include that within the description so that parents know that is a track and a path that allowed them to be prepared for that. With our immersive Spanish program coming now from the DLI program from Santan, you got to remember DLI programs, once we get to the 6th grade, right, is that immersion aspect of it. When we move it to the middle school, we call it immersive, not immersion, because they're not spending, it's one class, it's not the entire half of the day that's being taught in that language. Next year, we'll have Immersive Spanish 7, and then the next year after that would be our first class of Immersive Spanish 8, but we wanted to add them both to the book right now for our middle schools. All right, HVA. So last year I came to you and said, hey, we found some courses we thought that would be really neat to be able to add as electives. I'll be honest with you, there wasn't a lot of interest in them, and at the same time, they weren't meeting our needs for what we needed for our online students. And so as you saw in status, we were asking to remove those courses because we did not use them. And we are kind of streamlining our process within HVA and the offerings of what's happening. We did add Honors Earth Science. We already had on-level Earth Science, but there's the opportunity to change up and to make sure that we have an Honors Earth Science as well within the HVA. And so really, when you look at the course content for HVA for the 7-12 aspect of it, not a lot of changes. I will say this, one popular course that continues to be is the sign language through online, and I know we talked about that last year, and the numbers within that has continued this year as well. That's where I'm hitting the same button every time. Okay, so we went through the course guides. So questions, please.
Yes. Do we have immersive 7th and 8th grade Mandarin at Cooley
Yes, we do.
right now?
Right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
We didn't have that before at Sossaman. It was just 7th grade.
No, at Sossaman, we're going to add immersive Spanish 7. We've called it Spanish 1 and Spanish 2, but we're changing it to immersive to help meet
Is
the
it that
needs.
because that class is just now moving to Sossaman?
Yeah.
6th grade is just now moving
Yes,
for next
coming up.
year.
Correct.
Okay, very good.
Really
Very
fast,
good.
but you'll still have Spanish 1 and 2 for kids that haven't taken.
We will, yeah, and it's really 1A and 1B.
1A,
there.
sorry.
Yes, 1A and 1B, those are still there. That's not changing. It's just with the kids that are coming up from the DLI program. A lot of times they're very advanced, and so we wanted to change that curriculum to meet them, meet their needs, which is why we called it the Immersive Spanish 7 and Immersive Spanish 8.
Really quick, can somebody test into that program, or do they have to come, I mean, can they test into that class, or do they have to come from the DLI program?
No, they can test into it, and so if we have speakers, we have the ability to give those tests to see where they're at, and that's what we would want to do, to put them in an appropriately placed class, instead of having them sit through something.
Right, okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
President Kaler.
Please.
Not a question, but thank you for doing the planning guide. I think it will be helpful to parents to see what the progression is and try and help their student figure out what classes they want to take. I don't know how detailed it would be, but if we can indicate what may be dual enrollment, I think that we have a lot of kids who take a lot of dual enrollment classes who don't understand that they can get their associate's degrees. Yeah. And I'm not going to lie, it took a lot of work on my part as a parent to figure out between Chandler Gilbert and our schools on how to do that. But short of one class, and I know that they've been working on trying to get the one class, but short of one class, our high school students that are taking primarily the AP or the honors classes that are dual enrollment can earn their associate's degrees. And it's not pressuring them to, they're already taking the classes.
Right.
So I don't know if somewhere, not with this one, but looking forward, how can we let them know that this dual enrollment class, so that they can kind of plan that out too, because that is so, it's such an opportunity for these students. And again, it's not, oh, we're pushing them to excel. They're already taking these classes. It's not pushing them any more than they're already doing. And to pay for college credit at the community college is a lot cheaper than the university. And then I was fortunate, because of that, I had one get through a university in 3 years. Yeah. And that is a huge savings, even with scholarships. Right. So I know it's hard to think about as freshmen, but most of those classes will come from their sophomore and on up year. But I think the planning guide is a good start so parents can kind of see that progression, and then hopefully we can at least get them looking at, is it a dual enrollment class, and start tallying up what those enrollment credits could be. So thank you for putting that out there and thinking like a parent in that fashion, since you've recently gone through that.
Yes.
President Kaler, thank you for doing this. I think that starting so early has helped remember the problems that we may have had. I think that sometimes we forget if we wait a little longer into January on the problems that we had in July. And so I'm just really thankful that you got started on it 3 weeks into school, and I know that was probably a big undertaking. And I just want to thank all the committee members again, because it does take a lot of work to do these. I read all the changes. I think you did a fabulous job. I read Ms. Miller's, her whole course guide. It was fabulous. And just thank you to the whole, if you could extend my thank you to your whole team, that would be great. Thank you.
I will, thank you.
I know this has been a conversation every time we do course guide, and I know math comes up every time that our 8th grade math class does not count towards their 4 years. It does in some places, it doesn't here. I understand the reasonings. I still don't always agree with the reasonings. One of the things, though, that's important is that those kiddos in 7th and 8th grade know where they're going to end up in 12th grade math when they sign up. And that has to be a conversation that we must have in middle school, because too many times the kids get in over their heads and then they're in 12th grade math class and it's too much. So if we're not going to have that 8th grade math class count towards their 4 years, let's have those conversations in our math classes for sure at our middle school levels. Otherwise, it looks great. We are not voting on this tonight, so I encourage all of our board members that haven't looked through everything to look through everything closely, because it will be coming back in December for a final vote. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Thank you, Mr. Lotzenheiser.
Thank you.
You can check that off your list for the year.
It's fun.
It's fun. I don't know what's going on with my microphone, but. All right, Mr. Tyler Moore, we're moving on to our ESSER 3 update.
Good evening, President Kaler, members of the board. I'll wait for my presentation to come up, but I do have assisting me in this ESSER 3 update today, our Assistant Director of Federal Programs and Compliance, Ms. Melissa Garland, who will help elaborate on kind of our summer school plans for 2023. But as a reminder, this ESSER 3 update is required by ADE and part of the requirements to continue to receive this funding. If you don't recall, ESSER 3 was the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. This was approved as part of the American Rescue Plan back on March 2021. This will be our third update. So when that was approved in March, we brought the initial plan in November. We then provided a plan in June of 22, and now this will be our third update for this funding source. This funding source, the allowable uses include supporting the LEA's ability to continue to provide educational resources, address student social, emotional, mental health, and academic needs, supporting staff as a component of recruitment and retention. And you'll see that throughout this plan and as you've seen before. So I do want to note the Arizona Department of Education is the federal grant administrator for this federal fund. The funds do not come directly to Higley Unified, and I know there's been several news reports on how schools are spending this fund. And so with ADE administering this grant fund, there's oftentimes a lack of timeliness between the time expenditures are reported to ADE and they're classified on their website. So if you do see reports out there that we have not spent any ESSER 3 money, that is not true. It is strictly a timing implication between us and the Arizona Department of Education and how they're reporting up. And I know Melissa has worked very hard with ADE to get our grants revised and approved, and all our reimbursement requests have to go through them as well, and so that does take time. So I just wanted to footnote that because I have seen some articles that have shown we've spent $0. So diving into the budget, so this is our ESSER 3 updated spending plan budget. Not a lot has changed here. We've just moved a few dollars around. The majority of the changes have come in the two buckets of learning loss initiative and support and retaining staff. As we've expended some funds, we've trued up some of these numbers, but you'll still see 21% of the budget through this ESSER 3 plan is in the learning loss initiative. And as a requirement of this budget, this fund, we are required to spend at least 21% or 20%. So we still meet that requirement. And as we tie out these expenditures, we do anticipate possibly increasing that percentage as some of our budget numbers fluctuate. I do want to remind you that the total amount for ESSER 3 was $7.8 million. We've approximately expended 78% of that budget. So we are on the tail end of this funding source. And as you'll see through this plan, a lot of it has already been allocated, and we are just waiting to expend that. So diving into the learning loss category, the blue, I try to color code this to make it a little easier to follow. So the blue indicates the budget remaining, and the red indicates the expenditures have already been incurred. And so with the summer school in 21-22, it was last year, we expended approximately $200,000. On the next slide, Melissa will go into the details on our plans for this upcoming year. And we do have budgeted for one more year, 23-24, within this funding source. The additional counselors, we added 3 counselors to the service elementary students. If you remember, we had a difficult time hiring individuals, and so that budget has come down slightly just because we were unable to fill those positions when we originally issued this budget. So those positions are filled now, all 3 elementary counselors. While they're not complete counselors right now, they're TOSAs and working on their certifications. We do have resources available now for those elementary schools to service those students. And as you know, we do have a district lead counselor, Ms. Dina Morgan. She has been fabulous so far. Very excited to have her. And so that remaining blue indicates the budget that will take us out to 2024 to maintain those positions. And then at that point, we'll look to bring those into the operational budget, our maintenance and operational budget during that 23-24 budget conversation. 95% phonics core classroom program. This was purchased and is being utilized. It is a research-based phonics program that meets the requirements for the Move On When Reading requirement for the state of Arizona. It also supports the reading loss initiative resulting from the pandemic. So with that, I'll let Melissa talk a little bit about summer school.
You quickly about our summer school plan. I would like to start by recapping what we did this past summer. It was our second summer school that we funded using ESSER money. We had 3 elementary sites, and collectively they served just over 400 students. We also used, we intended to use ESSER funds to do our credit recovery, which is a big part of the learning loss. But you may be aware that the governor put out the AZ on Track grants this past year. So we elected to use that funding for our high school credit recovery program, which was very successful. We had 200 students in the first session, 210 in the second, and all but just a few earned the credits that they were trying to recover during that time. We also serviced Math Boost, the Math Boost program for middle school students at Higley High School as well. That was not a credit recovery program. However, it did fit the learning loss because it was students that had been identified by their elementary sites as well as their 7th grade teachers in need of some math support throughout the summer. For our elementary sites, we used a combination of ESSER funding at 2 sites and then our Title I funding at the 3rd site because we had those funds available as well to service those students. Our plan moving forward is to look at hosting 2 elementary sites rather than 3. The reason for that is we found that when students were registered, our attendance at the beginning wasn't what it could have been in certain sections. And so we feel like if we were to condense them into 2 sites, maybe one at the northern part of the district, one at the southern part, using that feeder system, that we could collectively service the same number of students, because based on what happened in the summer of the 2020-21 school year, it's all about the same number of students. So we're really looking at doing that. We are going to continue to explore other funding for our high school. I have received communication that the AZ on Track grants will be available again, but we don't know yet what the scope of that will be. However, the ESSER 3 budget still has enough to cover summer school for credit recovery in the high school at the same capacity that we did this year. And there's also enough to continue with the Math Boost, which we would like to do. And we are looking at including an English language arts boost if the interest is there. What we may encounter is that if students need both, the language arts and the math, it's deciding which one they should enroll in and whether or not parents are wanting that support during the month of June. During those times, we'll also provide transportation as well, just as we've done in the past, and also any support personnel that we need to provide the appropriate services for all of the students.
Thank you. Moving on to the support and retain highly qualified employees category. You'll see this one's all but spent. The one-time retention stipend was paid out November. You'll see that actual expense, and that was a $1,500 retention stipend to all employees who return this fiscal year. I've received very positive feedback for that, and very appreciative for that retention stipend. The remaining budget here, there's a little bit of budget left for PD and it says teachers and staff, but this is mainly for our counselors, the 3 counselors that we have at the elementary and our lead counselor, to provide them with educational resources to continue to provide services to our students and be on the forefront of what is going on in instructional practices. We still are keeping our transportation incentive stipend out there. Mr. Crosby is still looking for bus drivers, so There is a referral and recruitment bonus. This was if a new hire, if a person is referred, the new hire will get $1,000, and that's divvied up between $500 if they start, and then 6 months into the job, they would get the remaining $500. And then the employee who made the referral would also receive an incentive stipend for $500. So COVID leave, we've talked about this before, but in '22, that grossly blew up our budget. We underestimated the impact of that, but thankfully we had this funding source to cover that leave. As you know, for fiscal '23, the district is no longer providing COVID leave, so individuals who do come down with COVID are continuing to use general leave for that purpose. ABM contracted cleaning, this was expensed in the first initial year of COVID. This allowed us to provide additional level of sanitation to those classrooms that were at the time being tracked, and we were able to hire 2 to 3 contracted cleaners to come in and spray down the classroom and disinfect. Operational support costs, these are costs for maintaining and operating the grant. These are indirect costs that are transferred from the grant to the indirect fund. Moving on to the category of school facilities repair, basically this is HVAC. We've experienced a number of different variations in terms of budget and what we budgeted and what we actually expended. Largely in response to supply chain issues. We're not, I guess, immune to the supply chain issues that are happening, and so we've made several adjustments in here. So I've left the original budget on the left in the blue, and then the actual cost in the red. I won't dive into too much detail, but you can see some variations across the board. Some big ones include the Higley High. That was a central chiller. That cost was grossly went up from the time we budgeted to the time we actually expended that. And then Santan Elementary, we actually moved forward a project. They have a central cooling system as well. And so we chose to replace that. That was a greater need at the time. So you'll see this budget is 92% expended. Again, showing this funding source is sunsetting. Lastly, the category of technology. Not much has changed here. We do have one instructional software tool that IT has identified, along with the instructional coaches, as a greater need. And so they've added that to this. It's called Nearpod. I can't speak to it too much, but I know it is used as support for instructional software. And maybe Ms. Anderson can speak to it more. But I know that has been popular, and they are looking at renewing that for year 3. Some of these other purchases are just waiting for quotes to be expended out. So again, this budget, 69% expended, and this will be on the tail end. And then lastly, we'll continue to post these updated spending plans on our website. Our next update will be in June of 2023. We have already updated our Safe Return to In-Person Learning plan. That is also on our website. And then we'll continue to plan future oversight meetings. We didn't have any in-person meetings, but we did inform our committee, those who are still employed with the district and were on the original committee. Again, there was no major changes to the plan, and so we'll continue to move forward with expending the ESSER funds as budgeted. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Any questions or comments? So it looks like you're still going to be talking about COVID in June of 2023. So as sad as that makes me, I've been grateful for this generosity that was given to us when we needed it most. And so it has been used for the greater good. And I've been very grateful for ESSER 1, 2, and 3. And there will not be an ESSER 4 at this time, so everybody knows. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Tyler Moore. Next up, we are going to have a middle school lease update. This has been a conversation that we have had many a time over the years concerning our middle school leases, how we could do something different, better, bring it back to us, refinance. we've used many words in many meetings about our lease. So thank you for this update and working so hard on this, Mr. Tyler Moore, and I look forward to hearing all about it.
Yes, thank you, President Kaler, members of the board. I'm anxiously, I guess, eager to present this update here. Yeah, we've talked about it probably ever since I was hired. This was set on my desk. This is an issue. That was my intro to Higley Unified. Immediately, I mean, this has been a huge budget item. It's in every single budget conversation that we have. And so, initially, if you recall, we proposed a payout of one of the schools in the 2021 bond. That failed to pass. And so we also surveyed our community and stakeholders as well as our teachers. And then we found there's just a general misconception on this lease and what it does and how it impacts us financially. It was clear, though, that it was not to be put in the 22 bond, which we did not do. So that put us back to the drawing board. And so I'm here tonight with Mr. Jim Giel from Gus Rosenfeld, our bond counsel, and Mr. Mike Lavelli from Stiefel Public Finance, who have been working on this with me for the last year, looking at various plans and various options for this. And so tonight we do have a plan that we'd like to present to you. I'll try to do my best to explain it in layman's terms, but I will ask for their assistance on some of the conversations that we've had to get to this point. But first, I want to just kind of remind the board and kind of give a little overview what the middle school leases are. So these were approved in 2012. There was a lease agreement at the election. That original lease had total estimated payments by the district for the entirety of the lease. This was a 40-year lease of approximately $178 million for those two middle schools. So that takes into consideration principal, interest, and various fees and agreements as part of that original lease agreement. That agreement was done with the Industrial Development Authority of the City of Phoenix, the Arizona Education Facility Revenue Bonds, JMF Higley, and again, that was done in 2012. So I'm gonna do my best to give an analogy. I'm a visual person, so an analogy of what we are kind of proposing. So it's essentially a refinance. We're looking to refinance this lease. I provided on the screen here a visual of our two schools. So we own Cooley and Sossaman Middle School. Actually, we don't own those. We are leasing those. We have JMF Higley, and I realize how that is presented. Not intentional, but, and then we also have the Phoenix IDA, the bank, in which our lease payments are made to. And so currently, we make a payment to JMF Higley. JMF Higley takes that payment and makes the payment to the Phoenix IDA. That payment is then, JMF Higley does manage various fees and agreements with some of our funds, and they pay the principal and interest to the Phoenix IDA Bank. So what we're proposing is to eliminate JMF Higley and just pay the bank principal and interest. And so I know that's a very high level and probably not the best reference, but essentially what we're looking at doing is refinancing our lease agreement. With that, I would like to invite Mr. Jim Giel up to talk a little bit about the terms in this agreement and talking to you about some of the legal conversations that we've had.
Thanks, Tyler. Jim Giel with Gus Rosenfeld. Good to be back here again. I'm sure you recall we've had a couple of prior discussions about this 2012 financing. So I just wanted to go through, there's a fair amount of detail, as Tyler mentioned, and intricacies involved with that financing, way more involved than any kind of bond issue that the district or any district would do normally. So I just wanted to kind of take you through some defined terms from that 2012 financing so that you have a sense of exactly who the parties are and what documents we're talking about, because we do have a couple of underlying issues that we're trying to get resolved with the borrower still. But I think we're in good shape, but I just kind of want to lay everything out for you with respect to those issues. So first, just to start, Tyler mentioned the borrower, JMF Higley. That's the limited liability company that stands between you and the Phoenix IDA. They are a 501c3, and they are technically the owners of 2 of your middle schools. The IDA, Tyler mentioned the Phoenix IDA, you normally wouldn't ever have to bother with them, but again, due to this unique structure that was presented to the prior administration, that's kind of where you are with IDA bonds. So the bonds themselves, nearly $70 million of bonds that are callable in the normal term of 10 years. So in this case, December 1st, 2022, you can call the bonds either in whole or in part. But the key here is that we need the consent of the borrower and the IDA. Normally, you would imagine that you would need the IDA's consent to throw a bunch of money at them and for them to call their bonds. But the wrinkle here is that we need the borrower's consent as well, in this case, JMF Higley, the foundation. So we've been working on with them for a number of months, I guess over a year now, and we do have them on board. They were, I would say, reluctant at first, but I think we're there now. As part of those 2012 financing, we've got facilities use agreements, 2 of them, each dated 40 years, 1 for each middle school. The facilities use agreement, well, let me just back up. We've also got ground leases that I don't mention on here because they're not up in the air in any way. But the way it worked was the district leased, you own the real estate that the 2 schools are on. That's the good news. You lease those 2 parcels through 2 separate ground leases to the 501c3. And then the 501c3 leased the 2 schools, once they were completed, to you in the form of these 2 facilities use agreements. So you can kind of think of the facilities use agreements as lease agreements. That's what entitles you to be in the school using them. We've also got a trust indenture, something you would never have in a normal school bond issue, but that's the agreement between the IDA and the trustee, UMB Bank in this case. And UMB kind of takes care of the debt, if you will. They are the representative of the bondholders, so there are financial institutions and possibly mom and pops out there who own your bonds. Well, I'm sorry, the Phoenix IDA bonds. And if the district chooses to move forward, we'll call them away from them and use district proceeds. We'll get to that. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit to call those away. But that's where the trustee comes in. They get very much involved in that process of redeeming bonds early. Under that trust indenture, we have a capital repairs fee that's required to be paid, and you guys have been very diligent. You've made those payments. You're paying $175,000 per school annually. We've got over $1 million in that capital repairs fund that is built up over time. As you've probably heard, we've had a hard time getting that out because as part of the original financing, it was upfront agreed to what repairs would be made on a set schedule, which of course never made any sense. But Tyler's been lucky to get some of it out, but again, still sitting on $1 million. Which brings me to the capital repairs fund itself, which is the actual fund under the trust agreement held by UMB. We struggle with this one a little bit because there's a provision in the trust agreement, and as I think I've mentioned to you in the past, that says if we pay the bonds off, the balance, in this case over $1 million, accrues to the benefit of the borrower/foundation and not to you, which of course is as silly as it sounds. But there's another provision, section 5.14 of the trust indenture, that says, never mind, you guys actually do get the money. So fortunately, the borrower/foundation has agreed to read it the way we're reading it on section 5.14. So the district will ultimately get the benefit of the $1 million. That should never have been an issue, and I kind of attribute it to a drafting error 10 years ago, but that's the way the documents read. Another one of the primary documents to which you were a party 10 years ago were 2 option agreements. The option agreements were exhibits to the facilities use agreements, so 1 for each site. Unfortunately, they allow you to exercise options to purchase the sites, but only, or the improvements, but only within a 30-day window, June 1st to June 30. So that's not very helpful when we're talking about redeeming bonds as early as January, February, March, whenever interest rates cooperate. So we have, I believe, gotten the foundation/borrower to agree to amend that provision so that, they'll be flexible in terms of allowing the district to exercise the options when it makes sense and when we can redeem bonds. So, Tyler, if you can go to the next slide. So if you do choose at a later meeting to go forward with this, we will formally notify the IDA, the borrower, and UMB and their respective counsel, and all those parties that I've just mentioned have all been involved in conversations of your intention to prepay in full the outstanding bonds. And if you do choose to do such a resolution, again at a later meeting, you're not locked into it in any way. You don't have to issue certificates of participation in this case to redeem those bonds. You can adopt a resolution and wait for the markets to see when interest rates make sense, and we'll get to that discussion. But what I'm trying to express to you is that you are not required to do anything with that resolution. It is not binding on you. It is simply an authorizing resolution where if we fit in certain parameters right in the middle here, we say if we could put together a financing not to exceed 30 years in an amount not to exceed $61,730,000 at a bond yield not to exceed 5.75%. So if we can fit in those parameters, then you've given district staff the authority to move forward with a refinancing. But again, it's all contingent upon the market. If you decide to go forward with a resolution on December 14th or later, UMB will then provide a contingent notice to the existing bondholders that the district has taken such action, intends at some point to redeem bonds. Again, we're required to give that notice, but it can be contingent upon the district issuing those COPs, certificates of participation. At that point, once we issue certificates of participation, the existing bonds get paid off, the underlying real estate, the two middle schools get released, and then encumbered again for your new lease financing. But let me stress, this lease financing that you could do to take out these bonds is very straightforward. We've done it a number of times for other school districts in the Valley, and it's really what the district should have done 10 years ago, rather than do this, IDA financing. So this is tried and true, and we believe there's a market for your certificates of participation. So basically a lease financing. So we'd just be taking the remaining 30 years of your original 40-year financing. Do you have any questions about what I've covered rather quickly?
President Kaler, our current leases are something that, have you seen our current lease, the current lease that we have now? Have you seen this throughout the state or the country at all?
The 10-year-old financing that you're party to?
Yeah, the 2012 that we've.
No, that was very unusual. You were kind of the test case, unfortunately. The group that got it through, the prior administration, tried to do it in other jurisdictions, other school districts in the Valley, and we kind of were able to warn the others off.
So we're the only one?
As far as I know, you're the only one who actually did it. I wasn't a party to it. We were your bond counsel prior to that, but we were let go as part of this tenure, as part of this prior financing, since we didn't want to do it.
Many, many boards ago. I just want to point that out to all the people maybe watching, that this was many boards ago and 2 superintendents ago. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, so I'd like to invite Mr. Mike Lavelli up to talk a little bit about how this would look if based on the current market and what we have outstanding. So,
thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Mike Lavelli with Stiefel. I too was working with the district back then, but not involved in this transaction. And as Mr. Gill mentioned, I'm glad he mentioned it right at the tail end of his presentation, the district has the ability to do lease purchasing. You do lease purchasing for copy machines and buses sometimes, and you can do a lease purchase structure to finance buildings in our state. And the district could have done it on its own through the use of a publicly offered lease, i.e. a certificate of participation, which is what we're talking about here, But again, instead, they routed it through this sort of nonprofit, through the IDA structure. It's more akin to a charter school financing. That's, I guess, the closest thing I'd say it's akin to. Again, we don't see it in the public school space at all, other than this district. This evening, we just wanted to show sort of the before picture and the potential after picture. The before picture is the darker blue bars. The principal that would be refinanced is that first column there, the first dark, roughly 61 million and change. It could be replaced with less principal, and how could that be? Well, in refinancing the entire 2 leases, the entire amount, it will release some reserve funds. Okay, there are these reserve funds, because these are education revenue bonds through the IDA, a reserve fund was required. When we do certificates of participation, as the district, you do not need to do a reserve fund. And so there is a reserve fund outstanding, money sitting in an account. It is investing, being invested, but it's available in case the district does not make a payment on this, and then they would use that to make the payment. But that would be freed up. And that reduces, and so we will use that to contribute to the new deal and lower the principal, the amount that you're borrowing, okay? So that's that and a couple other special funds. We're releasing some monies, and that's why the principal is less than the original amount being refinanced. The interest column, replacing the old with the new, right now, unfortunately, because of where the market is, interest rates have shot up. Since January 1 of 2022, the lowest point almost in history, to today, they have shot up. So this picture looks a little different than when we talked in the last year or 2 or 3, where rates were. So the interest cost on the new transaction is likely going to be higher than the interest cost alone on the old transaction. However, we have this last column, which is the fees, the fee component, roughly $16 million remaining. And so there's annual payments in addition to the debt service being paid, as Mr. Moore mentioned or showed in his diagram. $2 signs going to JMF Higley, $1 sign going to the IDA. The other dollar sign is going to fees and other accounts. And so that's an annual amount too. So those amounts would be removed entirely and replaced with no annual fees through the COP issue. So essentially replacing $16 million of fees that are programmed in over the next 30 years. And so with that, the amount of remaining payments, which includes the various fees and restrictive fund deposits, so your capital repairs fund, that that deposit you're making that Mr. Gill mentioned, that amounts to, over the next 30 years, of about $124 million and change. You'd be replacing that right now, and again, it's based on our estimated rates, numbers that we ran about a week and a half ago, and that'd be about $114 million. So you would have roughly about $10 million over the life, the 30-year life, of freed up general fund budget capacity, cash flow capacity. And that last paragraph, about $365,000 a year of improvement to your general fund. And an additional amount, likely, because we're freeing up the capital repairs fund, of $1 million that we hope can be spent right away or at the district discretion for capital. And so roughly $10 to $11 million freed up, again, depending on where the market is, when we were able to lock in rates and secure and find out what that overall interest cost is. Going to the next.
Let me just elaborate on that a little bit. So that what that means is, if you recall our budget presentations, right? We've been earmarking 4.4 million, basically right off the top of our budget for this payment. So that would be reduced by approximately 365,000 based on current interest rates right now. So that can fund a number of teachers. We can do a number of things with that, which is why this deal, even though interest rates are not in our favor right now, it still makes sense because of the operational funds that we will get back on an annual basis. So,
Mr. Moore or either one, so looking at like these big numbers, like $178 million was like this big, so and I get like the whole charter funding, like JMF Higley is that, what did he make?
Oh,
like,
boy.
what is he made
Well, the
off of
foundation
this,
itself,
or
the
the
JMF
foundation?
Higley, I don't know if they make a lot annually on this, but there's other fees, you know.
So is
There's a
that the benefit
developer.
for him, is the fees that he's able to pocket back?
They earn a fee for managing the facilities and you know, there's facilities use agreements. The foundation itself does not make a lot from what I can understand sense, but there's also annual fees for the management of the facility, which is a separate entity. There's fees for trustees, there's the IDA fees. Okay, going through the IDA, they have a fee, an annual fee. It's 7.5 basis points, my recollection, of the remaining debt service. And so as you pay off debt, it does go down, but there's a fee annually on that. There's accounting fees, auditing fees. And so all of that would be essentially removed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that 178 million that Mr. Moore did mention at the beginning, that's adding up principal,
Everything
interest,
over
and all the
40 years.
40 years of projected
Right.
fees. Correct, yes.
But in 10 years of JMF Higley having it, there's had to have been some fees that.
Well, yeah, sure. The 178 million is now down to 124 projected, you know, for the next 30 years.
Right.
Yeah, the district has already been paying, you know, for the last 10 years on this.
Okay, thank you.
President Kaler? Mr. Moore, the 365,000, does that include the administration fees and all the additional that would come off? Or?
Correct. That's net. So that's the net, if you will, general fund savings. Basically, if you stack the 3 dark blue bars and then you stack the 2 light blue bars, it's the difference between those two. But then we break it down, you know, annually, and it's roughly about $365,000 of, if you will, pure savings of removing the fees of the old deal, and you don't have fees on the new one, annual fees on the new one.
So by removing the fees, by removing some principal, that's the net savings annually.
President Kaler?
Now, we like the present value dollars, and so $10 million of, you know, savings over 30 years amounts to roughly about $1 million, just under $1 million on a present value basis in today's dollars, if you will. That's a financing term, but we like to, you know, in our world, that's how we, you know, the value of this is roughly about $1 million. Now, if we lock in rates a month from now or whenever rates in January or February, if they are dipping lower than what we just ran a week and a half ago, that number will go up. Your savings will be higher. It'll be more than $365,000 a year. And in fact, are we ready to go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Rates, this is a snapshot of where the municipal market rates are about a week ago, as of November 4th in the bottom left corner there, bottom right, pardon me. And as of today, I believe rates have just dropped about 15 and 20 basis points. So that 4.08 at the very top, that's the 30-year rate, is now about 20 basis points less, so about a 3.9, let's call it 3.9%. Now, this is the AAA market. So these are issuers who are rated AAA. Not a lot of issuers are rated AAA, but everything prices off of this benchmark. So this is the general level of where rates are when they go up or down. Everything trades off of that. So we would be applying for a rating for your district for this lease, okay? Typically, lease purchases are 1 notch lower than your general obligation bond ratings. Your general obligation bond rating is a AA minus, I believe. And so we're hoping that you'll be in the A plus category on this lease. And that's how we've structured and estimated rates at this point. Those rates would be higher than what you're seeing here, because that's what a AAA borrower can get. Everybody else below that, AA, single A, actually pays a little bit more. And so we've priced it in at an A plus, if you will. And we hope that that's what we'll lock in terms of a rating.
President Kaler? Can either of you, because you have lots of experience in this as well, had we done this on our own, what would we have paid for these 2 middle schools?
Oh, boy. That's a very difficult question to answer, mainly because I think the original thought was to do a 25-year, you know, IDA deal, and then when the overrides didn't pass, I think they stretched it out to 40 years. I'm not so sure that we would have recommended, if we were hired to do, a lease on its own with the district, we would have recommended going out 40 years. I mean,
Well,
so it's a very difficult way, it's hard to do a comparison, if you will.
what does it average cost to build?
Oh, so you're talking about the construction dollars. Yeah, what was the amount that the district borrowed was, I believe, 70+ million.
70, yes.
That you did fund a reserve fund. You could subtract about $3.5 million from there. You did have a couple other things, additional payments and fees and all that. But, what was the pure construction contract? I don't know. It was probably north of 60 million at the time.
70 million, yeah.
Yeah. And at the time, in those dollars, I don't know what middle schools cost back then, but I'm not sure they were that much.
It would have been significantly less.
Potentially. Yeah, that's, I'm not a construction expert, but I mean,
This route cost us a lot more than it should have.
It was all packaged through the developer who put this whole package together and helped the district hire the contractor and put the foundation together and work with the IDA and made it look sort of charter school-esque, if you will.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. So looking at a timeline, as you know, we're bringing this as an information item. Mr. Gill mentioned, preparing a resolution for the governing board on December 14th. That resolution is flexible in that it would give us some time to either watch the market and make the most fiduciary response, action in terms of exercising this COPS deal and making sure that it's still benefiting the district and we're not making a deal that would financially put us in a worse situation. So it does provide a resolution approved on December 14th would provide us approximately 6 months of time in terms of executing this agreement. It would be within the fiscal year. We would not extend past fiscal year 23. But that is the general financing timeline. There's also several other things going on during this. We would have credit rating calls. We would be out in the market selling bonds. So there's other dates on this schedule, but this is a high-level look. And that is all I have. So if there's any questions, we'd be happy to.
President Kaler. Mr. Moore, I just have one question, or one right now. I just heard words like think and like we have them, but we think we have them, we're not sure. So do we have anything in writing from JMF Higley at all saying that they'll do this, or where are we with that?
I think we have verbal, and I know Mr. Gill is working on executing a written documentation. Maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, good question, Madam President, members of the board. Yeah, we do have email exchanges with the foundation and their council where they've agreed to the terms, so to speak, both the release of the capital repairs fund to the district and building in flexibility for the option agreements. But so what I was, as Tyler mentioned, what I was hoping to do was the district's formal direction to both the foundation/borrower and the IDA and the trustee. We would build into that instruction direction those terms. So that would be, so they would accept the change in terms. We would have either amendments or amended and restated option agreements for both. My real estate partner will work on those. And yeah, we won't go forward unless we have that, but we pretty well have it in hand, just at least as Tyler mentioned, verbally over Zoom meetings and in person as well, I believe, as well as written emails. So I'm comfortable with that.
President Kaler. Mr. Moore, I want to thank you for the hard work. This has been something, I moved to Arizona in 2012, in the summer of 2012, and this was something that we've heard about since December of 2012, these leases and what happened here. Since I joined the board 4 years ago, this was something that has always been paying of the lease, paying of the lease, paying of the lease, and I'm excited to see that we're working on something and not staying stagnant with our previous agreement. So I thank you because I know this probably took a lot of work on all three members who spoke here today on their behalf, because this was not a normal lease agreement. So I thank you.
President Kaler. Mr. Moore, the capitals repair fund that we're allowed to not use, right? Okay, right.
Not allowed.
Not allowed, yes. It's only for specific things, right, is what it was?
Correct, yeah. In that original agreement, there was a 40-year schedule for capital repairs, and I don't know how you anticipate what your buildings will need over 40 years. So we have submitted requests. They have been denied because they weren't a part of that 40-year capital replacement plan, which is why we haven't been able to touch that money and why it's accrued. So it was a part of the original deal. We signed the deal, and so Mr. Gill we've worked with JMF Higley to try to get requests out of that, but they have stuck strong with that deal.
Didn't we get the roof?
Huh?
Didn't we get the recent roof repairs?
Yeah, so the Sossaman roof, the 600,000, that was part of the capital repairs, the facility, their 40-year maintenance schedule. That was one thing that was up this year, which is why they granted that. Granted, we have done a number of other things on those buildings with our own internal budget. So it frustrates me that we still have to send off $350,000 to them to sit on the money. But they did approve the roof. But the next thing on that list would be a couple years out, and I think it was windows, which from our facilities director, they were not in need of repair. So it just shows the ridiculousness of that 40-year maintenance schedule. So.
Just so the public understands too, that we've asked and not been able to use the money, right, correct?
Correct.
So it's not like they're paying for our maintenance fees or anything.
Correct.
Okay.
President Kaler. In addition to that, we're also paying them to, to maintain what?
There's a management fee.
Management, which they don't have anyone managing our schools. So to put it in perspective, help me. So we have the debt, but we don't have the asset because someone else owns our buildings and we're leasing them. What you're asking to do is refinance them, and then we will still have debt, obviously, but then we have the asset of them because they would be ours. In the overall scheme of things, yes, a bank still holds them, but right now just like a mortgage, we own our homes, but we pay a mortgage, so technically a bank owns them until it's paid, but you have the asset of that. We don't even have that asset because there's somebody in between us.
President, under the new agreement, excuse me, the district would own both the real property and the improvements. You would then ground lease the real property and improvements to a trustee, possibly UMB, the current trustee, but possibly another bank, and then they would lease to you for a 30-year period your buildings, but it doesn't change the fact that you own them. You own them, they have an interest, the bank does, a leasehold interest for the 30 years to secure the financing for the benefit of the future of the COP holders. That's the security, but you do own, there's no question that you own both the improvements and the real property.
So like I said, similar to a mortgage, the bank's holding it, technically it's theirs until you pay it off. But here, as it stands now, it's someone else.
Yeah, that's true.
So that at least we gain that part of it, as in addition to saving some money. And it also doesn't mean that in the future, if we're back at historically low interest rates, that it's not something that can't be refinanced in the future and again save additional money with lower interest rates.
True, right. You wouldn't be locked into a 30-year financing. You would most likely have a 10-year option to prepay. Is that what we would expect? 9 or 10. Okay. So yeah, you could look at it down the road.
Okay. And it was something you said, and I'm trying to remember. Oh, the money that we would agree to get back, that's going to primarily, the focus will be for those schools as that money has been intended for. So we would look at using that where we need them at those schools. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. And if you recall in the 22 bond proposal, we didn't put any capital money in there because the intention was, at the time, the lease or would be funding those capital needs. So the money, the current balance in there would be utilized at those two schools to fund some of there's some outdated maintenance needs there. Yeah, that would stay within those two schools.
Which then frees up other money for other schools to meet their needs.
Correct, yep. Well, and this was intended for those schools as well, so we would honor that purpose.
Correct. But we're right now having to pay for stuff out of our regular budget because it doesn't fit in their timeline. So we'd be able to address other issues that need to be addressed at those schools with this money, and therefore it frees up other money in our budget to take care of some other things within the district.
Yep, yeah, in a round robin way, yeah. We could free up other operational capital dollars to emphasize some of our other capital needs across the district.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. $11 million savings over 30 years is a good deal at this point. So it's been a lot of work for you, I know, and we appreciate all the hard work you've put into this, Tyler. I know you worked hard for us, as well as our attorneys, and we are grateful as well. So I think this is coming back to you December 14th again, coming back to us December 14th for a resolution and a vote. So I encourage you, if you have any questions or concern, board members, please reach out to Mr. Moore and get those sorted out before that meeting. All right, we are moving on. We are going to our 2022-2023, this is 6.5, Classroom Site Fund Plan Review. We will be voting on this as well tonight, but this has been a discussion prior with our prior HR director and making sure that this site fund monies was put into our base salary for our teachers. And so this is just the kind of the sum of that. And again, I believe this is Mr. Moore? Yes.
Yeah, if I may, President Kaler, members of the board, I'll just make a couple comments. I won't go into too much detail, but you'll see the red line version here. A lot of the changes were done with Ms. Martins and the meet and confer team. But so formally, the Classroom Site Fund was formerly Prop 301. And if you remember in our budget conversations, that proposition expired in 2021. But our legislator and our governor extended that and made that 6-cent sales tax into law, and that now expires 2041. So we do have this funding all the way through 2041, but is now called the Classroom Site Fund. And so a lot of our language in here is aligning to that. During that legislative action, they did add the ability to extend beyond just classroom teachers. So we did modify our language to include some educational professionals that do support our classrooms within our Classroom Site Fund plan. In addition, the other big change was the move to Danielson. So the paper performance part in here is now reflective of our new evaluation system. So, but those are the high-level changes. If there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer. But you've seen this several times in several different initiatives where we've tried to increase pay specifically to the base, and that's represented in this plan here.
President Kaler, thank you for pushing this forward that we get to vote on it tonight. So then our teachers and staff get this, or our teachers get this before Christmas and before that big holiday, so they have that money.
Yeah, and in consent, you did approve that $1,500. If you scroll back up to the first page, that was in consent. You did approve that tonight. So.
Any other questions or concerns for Mr. Moore? Okay, I know our teachers are going to appreciate this. Moving on to 6.6, we have an amendment to policy KB, which is our parental involvement in education. And again, this is going to be, oh, this is Mrs. Richards' time. Yes. Sorry.
President Kaler, members of the board, as you know, the Arizona School Boards Association provided updates on several policies through the Policy Advisory Committee in August of 2022. This includes Policy KB, Parental Involvement in Education, where the purpose of the policy was clearly defined. It states that the governing board adopts this policy to promote the involvement of parents and guardians of children enrolled in the school district. The governing board recognizes parents' rights as codified in the Parents' Bill of Rights 1-601, 1-602, and in Arizona's other codifications of parents' rights as stated in Title 15 of the Arizona Revised Statutes. As a district, we request the support of the governing board for this updated policy and bring it to the forefront this evening. A key aspect of this policy is an updated definition of parent within this specific context. For the policy KB, parental involvement in education, parent means the natural or adoptive parent or legal guardian of a minor child. And one thing we know in Higley is we got the best parents in the world, and they're very involved. I want Dr. Treat to provide some additional insights to the process that was used in reviewing this policy and recommending updates.
Thank you very much. President Kaler, members of the board, one of the important things to remember is these policy updates, the language is influenced, of course, by state law. And it's very important that we always remind ourselves that we don't do this work in a vacuum, but we have regional peer districts, and it's important to see what our regional peer districts are doing and the way that they're handling this language and these opportunities to make changes as well. So I've had an opportunity to go ahead and do some research with our neighbors around here, and I can tell you that districts like Maricopa, Tempe Union High School District, Chandler Unified School District, Kyrene, Tempe Elementary have all accepted this language, and they have recently, just in the last 2 months, made the same types of changes that we're proposing, while the other districts, the Mesas and the Gilberts and the Scottsdales and Queen Creeks of the world, are in this same process where we are right now. So it's important to note that we are staying in step with what our regional peers are doing, and also affirming our support for parent rights here in the Higley Unified School District.
Thank you, Dr. Treat. And not only that, we also look at ASBA, we look at our attorneys. We run this through the whole gamut before it comes to our desk. And so we very much appreciate the background that goes into a policy before it even makes it to us. And we have plenty of time. We were given our board packets over the weekend so that we're able to read everything, ask any questions, get clarification. So by the time a policy reaches this moment, which will be in a couple that we vote on it, it's really gone through the ringer. So I appreciate the work that we do on policy here in Higley, and you're right, parental rights is a hot topic, hot conversation out there, and so thank you for getting this to us as soon as you could. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And with that, we have one more policy tonight. And this one is going to be 6.7, Amendment to Policy IMD, School Ceremonies and Observances. And this is from Mr. Walker tonight. Thank you.
President Kaler, members of the board, we're seeking board's approval tonight to amend Policy IMD, School Ceremonies and Observations, based on the ASBA recommendation that was rooted from HB 2707, which is also known as the Moment of Silence Law, that amends ARS 15-506, subsection A6, where it adds additional language that clarifies and specifies how long the moment of silence needs to be, and then what the role and responsibility of the teacher in the classroom is.
Thank you.
You're
Any
welcome.
questions, concerns? No, that's it. Thank you again. Again, policies are going through our policy committee weekly, and we appreciate the background that goes into them before they reach us. So with that, we are going to go and move on to some action items. I just lost it, but we are going to do 7.1 first. I move that the governing board approve the classroom site fund plan for the fiscal year 2022-2023.
Second.
I doubt there's any questions or concerns. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Next up, we have 7.2. Thank you. I move that the governing board waive the second reading of this policy and approve policy KB as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. 7.3. I move that the governing board again waive the second reading of this policy and approve policy IMD.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. 7.4, we had a presentation at our last board meeting on our preschool rates being proposed, updated. Here's a little picture of what's happening. Just for everybody to remember. Thank you. You can remove that. Thanks, Nate. So I move that the governing board approve the 2023-2024 rates for preschool as attached.
Second.
Questions, concerns, or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those not in favor? All those that abstain?
I abstain from that vote.
Motion carries 4-1. 4-0. Sorry, 1 abstain, 4-0. Christine, Mrs. Zimmerman knew it to write. All right, moving on. 7.5. I move that the governing board approves the 2023-2024 rates for Kids Club as attached.
Second.
Questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion. All those abstain?
I abstain from that vote.
Thank you. Motion carries 4-0. 1 abstain. All right. Moving on. We are going to ask the board, is there anything that you would like to see on any future agenda items? Dr. Foley had to step out tonight for her son's performance, but I'm sure that Mrs. Richards or anybody else could take information. Go ahead, Mrs. Anderson.
I'm not sure if this is the right spot for it, but I was just curious, as we receive information that has been brought forward within like a year or two, and we brought this in a previous board meeting, if on our agenda is that it could state the meeting date at which it had been brought forward. I don't know if that's something. What is it? Was I not clear? I'm so sorry.
Any of that. I'm so
sorry. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Whenever we're given information items or information and it says, well, this was brought forth previously at another board meeting, I was wondering on the agenda if it could state that board meeting date so that we don't have to try digging, our public doesn't have to try to go searching of when that occurred. And I don't know if we want to put a limitation on that or if it's something that is agreed upon. Again, I'm not sure if this is the right spot to request that, but I was just thinking an update to our agenda or our.
So normally if there's normally if we have an action item on a vote of something, it's going to be the board meeting prior, but that does not always happen. Right. So if it's not the board meeting prior, exactly, is that what you're asking for? Something that if it's.
Yes, because sometimes
like
information
weeks.
items, gosh, I am so sorry. Information items address things that have occurred meetings ago. So to answer your question, I guess yes, if it's not a previous meeting.
Vice President Anderson and members of the board, we can definitely make a note of that because it makes sense to me. If it was last month or whatever, I'm not going to remember what date. So you're welcome.
Anything else? I'm afraid to talk. All right. Is that better? We're almost done, so it doesn't really matter. We're going to take a little 10-minute break, and we are going to then have a work study. Our work studies was something that we did prior to COVID, where we would break out into a work study. COVID hit, we kind of got into the habit of doing everything in our kind of general meeting, but we are going back to our work studies. It's a nicer conversation on certain topics that we like to have. This will not be live streamed, but again, the public is always welcome to attend our work studies if they so choose. Tonight, we are going to be doing a suicide risk management. So again, a 10-minute recess, and then we will be adjourning from our meeting in our work study. Thank you and have a good night.